Welcome to our channel. Enjoy the video.
The Sierra Nevada mountains have always promised escape. Towering pine trees, crisp mountain air, and quiet cabins tucked deep into the forests of Northern California made the tiny resort community of Keddie seem like the perfect place to leave the outside world behind. Visitors came for peace. Families came to start over. No one imagined that one cabin would become the scene of one of America's most chilling unsolved murders. In 1981, Glenna Sue Sharp was searching for exactly that. A fresh beginning. After separating from her husband, she moved to Keddie with her 5 children, hoping the small mountain town would offer safety, stability, and a chance to rebuild their lives. They settled into Cabin 28, a modest rental surrounded by towering trees and friendly neighbors. Life wasn't perfect, but it finally seemed to be moving in the right direction. Sue quickly became known as a caring mother who worked hard to provide for her family. Her children adapted to the quiet community, making friends and enjoying the freedom that came with living in a place where everyone knew one another. The older children explored the woods, while the younger ones spent their days playing around the cabins. It felt like the kind of town where doors could remain unlocked and children could safely walk from one cabin to another. On the morning of April 11, 1981, nothing appeared unusual. The Sharp children spent time with friends, laughing and enjoying the spring weather. Sue stayed close to home, preparing for another ordinary evening. As daylight faded behind the mountains, family members and neighborhood friends slowly returned to Cabin 28. That Saturday night, 15-year-old Sheila Sharp accepted an invitation to spend the night at a friend's nearby cabin. It was a simple decision, one that countless teenagers make without a second thought. She hugged her family goodbye, expecting to see them again the next morning. Inside Cabin 28, Sue remained with 17-year-old John Sharp, 14-year-old Dana Wingate, who was John's close friend, 12-year-old Tina Sharp, and the 2 youngest boys, Rick and Greg. The younger boys eventually settled into a separate bedroom for the night, unaware that the next few hours would forever change their lives. Outside, Keddie became silent. The mountain air cooled, porch lights flickered against the darkness, and the forest settled into its familiar nighttime stillness. From the outside, Cabin 28 looked no different from the dozens of other cabins scattered throughout the resort. Nothing suggested that unimaginable violence was about to unfold inside. Somewhere during those late-night hours, an unknown person, or perhaps more than one, entered the cabin. What happened next remains one of the most fiercely debated mysteries in American criminal history. Investigators would later uncover evidence of a brutal struggle, suggesting that the victims fought desperately to survive. Yet despite the violence, the events of that night would leave behind more questions than answers. Even more astonishing was what investigators would later discover. In another bedroom, the 2 youngest Sharp boys and a friend had slept through the entire night, completely unaware of the horror unfolding only a few feet away. By sunrise, Cabin 28 was no longer just another vacation home in the Sierra Nevada mountains. It had become the center of a mystery that would haunt investigators, journalists, and true crime experts for decades. When the front door finally opened the next morning, the scene waiting inside would shock even seasoned investigators, and reveal a crime so horrifying that many believe it should have been solved long ago. The morning of April 12, 1981, began like any other in Keddie. The mountain air was cool, the cabins were quiet, and families were slowly starting their day. But at Cabin 28, normal life had already come to a violent end. Around 7:30 a.m. Sheila Sharp returned home after spending the night with a friend. As she approached the cabin, nothing seemed unusual from the outside. The front door was closed. The forest was silent. There was no warning of the nightmare waiting just beyond the entrance. When the door opened, Sheila froze. The living room had become a scene of unimaginable brutality. Furniture was overturned. Blood stained the floor. In the center of the room lay the bodies of her mother, Sue Sharp, her brother John, and John's friend, Dana Wingate. The attack had been savage, involving multiple weapons and signs of a desperate struggle. It was immediately clear that this was no ordinary crime. Terrified, Sheila ran outside screaming for help. Neighbors rushed to the cabin, but many stopped before entering, stunned by the horrific scene. Local authorities were called, and within a short time investigators arrived to secure what would become one of California's most infamous crime scenes. Then came an even stranger discovery. Sue's youngest sons, Rick and Greg, along with their friend Justin Smart, were found alive in a separate bedroom. Somehow, despite the violence only a few feet away, the three boys had slept through the night and were physically unharmed. Investigators struggled to explain how such a brutal attack could occur without waking them, or if they had heard something they couldn't fully remember. As detectives searched the cabin, another alarming fact emerged. 12-year-old Tina Sharp was missing. There was no sign of her body anywhere inside cabin 28. At first, investigators hoped she had escaped the attack and fled into the surrounding forest. Search teams combed the mountains, questioned residents, and followed every possible lead. But Tina had vanished without a trace. Inside the cabin, detectives collected fingerprints, blood samples, footprints, and other physical evidence. They believed the crime had involved more than one attacker due to the level of violence and the complexity of the scene. Yet preserving that evidence proved difficult. In the early hours of the investigation, numerous people had entered and exited the cabin before it was fully secured, potentially contaminating crucial clues. The case quickly grew more complicated. Witnesses reported seeing unfamiliar vehicles in the area the previous night. Others recalled hearing strange sounds but assumed nothing was wrong. Each new statement added another layer of mystery, but none provided a clear picture of what had happened inside cabin 28. Then, investigators uncovered something deeply unsettling. Several pieces of evidence suggested that the killers may not have been strangers at all. Some clues pointed toward individuals who knew the family, understood the layout of the cabin, and may have had a reason to be there that night. If that theory was true, the answers weren't hidden somewhere in the forest. They could have been living just down the road. As detectives began interviewing the people closest to the victims, a web of suspicious behavior, conflicting stories, and long-hidden secrets started to emerge, raising the possibility that the killers had been hiding in plain sight all along. As news of the murders spread across California, pressure mounted on investigators to find the killers. In a town as small as Keddie, many believed someone had to know what happened. But instead of producing clear answers, the investigation became tangled in contradictions, rumors, and missed opportunities. From the beginning, detectives focused on people connected to the victims. They interviewed neighbors, friends, and anyone who had been seen near cabin 28 in the days leading up to the murders. Several names repeatedly surfaced, but two men quickly attracted the most attention. The first was Martin Smart, a neighbor who lived only a short distance from cabin 28. The second was his friend, John Bo Bubade, a man with a violent reputation and alleged ties to organized crime. Witnesses claimed the pair had been drinking heavily on the night of the murders and were seen behaving strangely afterward. Investigators also interviewed Justin Smart, Martin's young son, who had spent the night in the bedroom with the two youngest Sharp boys. Over time, Justin gave multiple accounts of what he remembered. Some statements suggested he had slept through the night. Others hinted that he may have witnessed part of the attack. His changing recollections made it difficult for detectives to determine what was fact, what was confusion, and what might have been influenced by trauma or repeated questioning. Then another disturbing detail came to light. Martin Smart reportedly told his wife something that would haunt the investigation for years. According to later accounts, he allegedly admitted being present during the murders but denied taking part in the killings themselves. Whether this statement was truthful, exaggerated, or misunderstood has never been conclusively established. Even so, it intensified suspicions surrounding him. Despite these leads, no arrests followed. As months turned into years, criticism of the investigation grew. Evidence had reportedly been misplaced. Important interviews were delayed. Potential suspects were not pursued as aggressively as some believed they should have been. Questions were raised about whether personal relationships, limited resources, or investigative errors allowed crucial opportunities to slip away. Then, decades later, the case took an unexpected turn. Investigators re-examined physical evidence using modern forensic techniques that were unavailable in 1981. New DNA testing and renewed case reviews uncovered information that reignited public interest. Authorities also revisited old witness statements, hoping advances in science could succeed where the original investigation had failed. One discovery was especially significant. A piece of tape believed to have been used during the crime had been recovered near where Tina Sharp's remains were eventually found years after the murders. Modern forensic testing offered investigators another chance to analyze evidence that had remained silent for decades. For the families of the victims, hope returned that the truth might finally emerge. But every new clue also raised another troubling question. If the evidence had been there all along, could this case have been solved years earlier? In the final chapter of this mystery, we'll explore why the Keddie Cabin Murders remain officially unsolved, the theories that continue to divide investigators, and the unanswered questions that still haunt Cabin 28 more than 4 decades later. More than 4 decades have passed since the murders inside Cabin 28, yet the case remains officially unsolved. The cabin itself is gone, demolished years later, but the questions surrounding that night have never disappeared. In 1984, 3 years after the murders, the investigation took another heartbreaking turn. Nearly 50 miles from Keddie, in a remote area of Plumas County, a man searching for bottles made a chilling discovery. Human remains were found in the woods. How Tina died, why she was taken from the cabin, and where she had been in the time between the murders and the discovery of her remains remain some of the most haunting questions in the entire case. As the years passed, retired investigators, journalists, and independent researchers continued digging into the evidence. They uncovered reports suggesting that critical clues may have been overlooked, mishandled, or never fully investigated. Some believed the original inquiry suffered from serious investigative mistakes. Others argued that the truth had been obscured by conflicting witness statements and the limitations of forensic science in the early 1980s. In 2013, the case received renewed attention when investigators announced that new evidence had strengthened long-standing suspicions about individuals previously considered persons of interest. Modern DNA analysis and fresh reviews of old evidence gave detectives renewed hope that advances in forensic technology might eventually provide definitive answers. Yet hope alone has not solved the case. No one has ever been convicted. No courtroom has ever heard the full story of what happened inside Cabin 28. The official investigation remains open, and law enforcement has continued to encourage anyone with credible information to come forward. Over the years, countless theories have emerged. Some believe the murders resulted from a personal dispute that escalated into unimaginable violence. Others suspect multiple attackers acting together. There are also theories involving organized crime or broader conspiracies, but these remain unproven and are not supported by conclusive evidence. Despite decades of speculation, the publicly available evidence has never established a definitive sequence of events or identified the perpetrators beyond reasonable doubt. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the Keddie Cabin Murders isn't simply the brutality of the crime, it's how close investigators may have come to the truth without ever reaching it. Every new lead seems to answer one question while creating 2 more. For the surviving family members, the passage of time has not erased the pain.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. See you in the next one.